When the Astilla Prime was initially released about a year ago, it had one big problem. Believe it or not, it could actually be weaker than the normal version of the Astilla because of two key factors. 1. Huge discrepancy in Riven disposition, 1 versus 5, and 2. A conservative approach when it comes to buffing prime weapons over their normal counterparts. But times change, Riven disposition has changed, and now we got galvanized mods and weapon arcanes, making the Astilla Prime one hell of a shotgun. And today, my friends, I have the absolute pleasure of revisiting this beautiful primary weapon. As always, my name is Leyzar, and I got a couple of builds lined up. Something cheap, something affordable, something for the more casual Tenno that you should treat as a jumping off point. But fear not, my veteran friends, we also got the endgame setup, the maxed out setup with prime mods, galvanized mods, a Riven. We're going to be taking this one to Steel Path and see what exactly it's capable of. That said though, please bear in mind that my builds and guides usually take a more new player friendly tone, simply because I want anybody watching to understand how the weapon functions and how it should be built. So I take my time and I explain a whole lot of aspects that veteran players should already be familiar with. So in case you're a vet and you already know most of the stuff, please bear with me. And with that out of the way, let's jump into the Astilla Prime. Let's begin by having a quick look at how the weapon handles without any mods equipped. And for that, just a couple of quick free shots. The Astilla Prime is a true blue automatic shotgun with a projectile based attack. Now this is no mere shell flying through the air, this is a glass shell which detonates upon impact in a 2.4 meter radius with a 30% damage drop off. It's not a huge AoE, but there's something there to spread the love. Now the fire rate is pretty good, the recoil is extremely jumpy, but it is a shotgun, and the reload is on the quick side, 2 seconds for 24 magazine. Quick? More like decent. Now this is Gara's signature weapon, and if you choose to use it with Gara, this one will have 80 extra ammo reserve. So going from 120, which I believe is standard, let's double check really quick. Yes, from 120 you're going to 200. For my 2 cents, I never had any ammo issues with this weapon, but there you go. So when it comes to usability, considering again it's a shotgun, there's really not a whole lot you can complain about. Let's hop into stats to see exactly what we're dealing with. Mod capacity 60 out of 60, and if yours comes with a measly 30 out of 30, you go into actions and you install the Auto King Catalyst. Now this is a necessary step for mostly any weapon in Warframe if you want to get the most out of it. Is it worth for the Astilla Prime? 100% definitely build this weapon. My weapon has been format a total of 5 times. This is not a format heavy weapon. I over format simply because I want to test all sorts of mod combinations so I can bring you the most optimal builds. For the weapon build I'm recommending you can get away with something like 2 to 3 format. The empty arcane slot should always be unlocked because these arcanes are raw power. It's as simple as that. Primary Merciless for a hunter munitions vital approach. Essentially go with Merciless when you see that most of your targets are dying under the effects of procs. If you want to use your weapon in tandem with your melee weapon, primary dexterity instead. And of course you also got primary dead hit. Now this one is more of a blunt forced approach, if you know what I mean. You go for this one when you want to build something like corrosive heat on the weapon and your targets are not going to be dying under the effects of procs, but instead from the heavy duty impact damage. You get how that one works. So that's your priority mostly. In the Excellence slot, there are a couple of winners here. You can go with Galvanized Acceleration. Now this will increase the drop off by a lot, especially when it's fully stacked out. But even so, 39 to 78. By default you got 30 to 60. The fall off is huge. You're not really gonna be using this one more than 30 meters away. You don't really need Galvanized Acceleration. And while I'm fully aware this is a very shiny mod, look, it's galvanized and I have it and I maxed it out and I want to use it, it might be a smarter idea to go for something as simple as narrow barrel. This will increase your accuracy and it's gonna make it easier for you to get headshots. It's really up to you. It really depends. Honestly, I still go with Galvanized Acceleration simply because I get that projectile flight speed doesn't only count for the fall off, it also means I'm leading my targets less, the projectile moving faster, easier for me to get my headshots. This being a critical weapon, it's imperative to go for headshots. If you're using critical weapons on non-heads of the enemies, you're losing a lot of damage, unless of course your weapon had its headshot multiplier removed, like the Arca Plasmor for examples. But those exceptions are very few and far between. If you don't know how critical chance, critical multipliers work in Warframe and why it's important to know these things, well, I got a full and detailed guide in the cards right now. If I was gonna explain it to you now, I would take another 10 minutes. So there you go. You should watch the critical guide after this review. Now the fire rate is 4.33, pretty good. The magazine 24, alarming. Shotgun. Reload of 2 seconds, Riven Dispo 3 out of 5. Fantastic, which means I'm gonna be able to leverage the power of Riven mods, which are not overly expensive in the case of the Astilla or Astilla Prime. Trigger automatic, now the damage. Critical chance, critical damage. 21% base is not fantastic, but it still makes it viable for a hunter munitions approach, which is the most effective and the most used, and probably by this point the most boring. 1.9x critical multiplier. I don't get this. This is the normal multiplier that even the Astilla has. I don't get why they at least didn't give it the standard 2.0, but there you go. Status chance is good at 47%, and the damage is gonna be impact here, but puncture and slash here. Your radial attack is down here. This right here is just a projectile making contact with the target. That glass bulb actually hitting your target generates 100 damage by default, and you get 140 from the explosion. But 140 is just the epicenter. Yes, you're losing 30% while you go to the edges at 2.4, and the damage is going to be puncture and slash. Now, my friends, let's check out a standard build for this one. Damage with point blank, multi-shot with health chamber, critical chance and critical damage through the use of critical deceleration and shrapnel shot. When it comes to critical damage, there is one mod which is more reliable and more used. It's called Ravage. Now this one gets you 60% critical damage. The problem with this one, it sucks. It's just 60%. It's so low. Simply go with shrapnel shot. That's another 39%. The problem with shrapnel shot is the fact that it's a bit more quirky. It's on kill and while aiming and for 9 seconds. Honestly, you should be aiming anyway because you gotta go for headshots, so I would recommend you give shrapnel shot a shot. I'm so sorry. Over Ravage. Now, we're also going to be going with Hunter Munition since this is a critical build, and since you're going with slashes on your target, you gotta have Vital on your target. Toxic Barrage, Frigid Blast, the two 60-60 Vital mods. Toxic Barrage is farmed from Corrupted Vor in the Void. From Corrupted Vor in the Void, you also get all the 60-60 Toxin mods. Easy to farm, no problem. You can get them in a couple of hours, get all of them. Or you can trade from the trade chat about 10 plat a pop on PC. Frigid Blast from Spy Missions, and again, the price is rather similar. Now, I use Fatal Acceleration in this one because I still believe in projectile flight speed, but you can use whatever fits your fancy. This, however, is an option slot. Plug into this one whatever you feel more comfortable with. Laser sight on headshot, 120% extra critical chance when aiming for 9 seconds. This is the Argon scope of shotguns, if you will. You see, laser sight and shrapnel shot are in the same vein. They kind of work the same way. These is what we used to refer to as Acolyte mods. Once upon a time, Digital Extremes had this cool event. Acolytes would come, we would fight them, we would grind them for really rare and powerful mods. This is back when Argon Scope was 400-500 plat, believe it or not. Yes, it cost a ton. But hey, I digress. Go for this one for an option slot. If you don't like it, if you don't like the idea, you can go for something like MultiShot. 60% Vigilante armaments. Just because a mod is great, just because a mod is bronze like Vigilante armaments or Shrapnel shot, it does not mean it's not powerful. Forget about the whole coloring of the mods. It's not relevant to modding. Not really. Now, if you're going to be adding Vigilante armaments, you're going to be going to 180% multi-shot, which is absolutely fantastic. That means that you got guaranteed 2 projectiles every time you fire, every instance you fire, and an 80% chance at a third one. If you go with laser sight, you get only a 20% chance at a third one. That's how multi-shot works. What else? I like magazine capacity on this one. You can go for something like magazine capacity like ammo stock or prime ammo stock. Don't go for burden magazine because this one is the same as this one, only minus 18% reload speed. Unless, of course, you want to stack the two, which I don't see why you would on this particular weapon. Now I'm going to make sure that my test results are not skewed by something like corrosive projection or arcanes, because it's really easy to make a weapon seem more powerful than it actually is if you introduce outside buffs or outside synergies. Essentially, you can make anything look good, but that's not my goal. My goal is to present the power of the weapon on its own 2 feet before we get into synergies and all whatnot, Warframe buffs. Now, I'm not going to have the full power of the build as first, because I do need at least 1 kill to get myself that critical damage from shrapnel shot. Remember what we talked about earlier. But now I got it, and of course the weapon is a whole lot more powerful. This is a critical weapon without critical damage, so you gotta get yourself that near-me critical damage. You shouldn't really have any issue keeping the buffs up in a normal average everyday missions, and you can keep track of them in the upper right portion of the screen. As you can see, I have no problem putting, what is that, 19 slashes and easily 10 viral procs. No problem with the slash, no problem with the viral. It may not be the most competent AoE weapon in the game, but that's not what it's for. It's got a little bit of spread the love, but that's pretty much it. And the performance for an average everyday build, mwah, absolutely fantastic. Thumbs up for this one. This is a build you should treat as a jumping off point. This is your base and you should improve from here. With Galvanized mods, Prime mods, maybe even get Riven. You're looking at something like so, which is more of the endgame setup and all whatnot. First I'm gonna tackle the faction mod. The faction mod is here simply because it objectively brings a whole lot of power to the build. I dislike it heavily, so I don't say hate. Instead of this one, you can simply add flat damage if you want, with the point blank as before, or if you have it prime point blank, definitely not a bad idea. I'm not a fan of these blasted things either, and they're not quite as powerful as some make them out to be. We're gonna talk about Galvanized Savvy now. You see it's not present on the build. If you're a veteran of Warframe, or if you know anything about modding, you know this is a very powerful mod that can successfully replace something like flat damage mods. This is true to a certain extent depending on the content that you're doing. Keep in mind that more flat damage is still better for better clear time, faster clear time, up until level 200-ish depending on the content. These dropping flat damage and going for different multipliers helps when you're dealing with levels in the thousands, which is not something most of us do, like the very vast majority of us, because it's entirely pointless, subjectively speaking. Galvanized Savvy works and doesn't work on this weapon, that's why it's not on the build. Galvanized Savvy will grant its bonus only to the projectile making contact with a target, which is about 40% of the damage you deal. This is 40%, this is the 60%, which is why Galvanized Savvy is not here. Digital Extremes decided that these mods, Galvanized Savvy, Galvanized Shot, and Galvanized Aptitude, will not be working on explosive weapons. And even though the Astilla Prime only has a small little bit of an explosion, it's still treated as an explosive weapon. Galvanized Savvy does not function on the explosion, which is why we're not using it. Galvanized Hell instead of the normal version, because you know it's just flat out better. Prime Ravage, yes, 110% critical damage. It's not that much bigger than Shrapnel Shot, just 11% more, but it is a lot more reliable. Same 60-60 mods, Galvanized Acceleration, Primary Merciless, since a whole lot of my targets are going to be dying under the effects of procs, and that's why we're not going for Deadhead instead. Go for Deadhead if you're going for something like Corrosive and Heat. And this mod right here, which is a Riven mod, beautiful, beautiful man, MultiShot, damage, critical chance. Now this could have rolled better, but it's unrolled. Check it out. MR10, beautiful man. Thank you so much for loaning me this one. And we're going to be testing out the weapon like so. So you can see the huge performance difference between a standard build, a jumping off point, and what is a more maxed out set. The more I kill, the more power I get. A single shot on that guy because of galvanized stuff. Look at that, a single shot. How beautiful. Oh, God, that's good. I love this stuff. Look at that. Look at that. Beautiful. Ah, fantastic. Fantastic. Performance off the chart. Now I know what you're gonna say. Dude, critical weapon, going for headshots on standing still target. That's not much of a sport now, is it? It's like shooting barrel in a fish. I totally get you. Let's head on over to the Path of Steel. Now what I'm going to be doing is showing you this mission from the start. These are level 130-ish, corrupted in Steel Path, and as you can see, even though I don't have a whole lot of stacks, I have no problem in already deleting them from existence. Of course, Butchers don't have a whole lot of HP, but still, it's absolutely fun to blow them up. Like so, you don't even need to go for headshots. Corrupted heavy goons like this one, on the other hand, are a whole lot more beefy, but even so, it's no problem whatsoever to completely melt your targets. There's really not a whole lot more I can show you in Steel Path. It's important to showcase normal gameplay as well, just so you can see that the weapon doesn't only perform in the simulacrum, and you can take this weapon to pretty high levels as well. As you can see, the performance is quite nice. My setup is Revenant, which helps with crowd control and survivability thanks to Mesmer Skin, and I also have the Panzer Volpaphyla with me. Remember when I said you don't always need to build viral on your weapon? The Panzer Volpaphyla can apply viral procs on my targets, you see by those blisters over there that looks like Saturn's thing, and you can simply destroy the target like so. That means on your weapon you don't no longer need necessarily to have viral, you can build something like Corrosive and Heat. Just bear in mind that the Volpaphyla is not really as reliable as your own gun, so do bear that one in mind. And I think that's pretty much it for Steel Path. Let's talk about some yummy Warframe buffs. If critical chance and critical damage and pretty numbers is what you desire, look no further than Lord Harrow. He's a fantastic choice for something like so. But if you're looking for the most amount of power, raw damage, just absolutely annihilate whatever stands before you, there is no better weapon buffer frame than Lady Mirage Prime and her outstanding fashion and buffs. Damn, I love that purple. Beautiful, beautiful, fantastic fashion on this one. Now, of course, we're going to be using corrosive projection against heavily armored targets. It's definitely something you should go for, but it's not mandatory by any stretch of the imagination. If the build you put together carefully or copied off of some video requires something else, simply use the aura of your choosing. It's not going to make a humongous difference. If the aura is that important to you, don't forget about the co-action drift that you can slot right here. Arcane's a lot more impactful. Arcane Avenger is a must, especially if you're not going to be using Harrow. 45% critical chance extra. This is a bonus additive after simply stacking on top of what you already have. It doesn't care about the base critical chance of your weapon. It applies to your primary, secondary, and to your melee at the exact same time. The catch with Arcane Avenger, you gotta be hit to actually get your bonus on. So do bear that one in mind. Farm from the third Eidolon down on Cetus. As for your second arcane, normally I recommend a Warframe arcane. Something like Energize, for example, right? If you must have more damage, if more raw damage is what you're after, you gotta go with something like Arcane Rage, another 180%. Now, this is one that I enjoy greatly. Arcane Tempo. This is for shotguns only, 50% chance at 90% fire rate. But the problem is you're just going to be hitting that reload time faster and faster and faster. So I wouldn't really recommend it. Fire rate is not fantastic in the case of the Astilla Prime. Honestly, Arcane Avenger is more than sufficient. But for the sake of, I don't know, even more power, let's go with Rage. Though again, 2 weapon arcanes on a Warframe build is not something I necessarily recommend. Unless, of course, you're a gun nut, like I am a gun nut. High level targets, 165, because, hey D, I heard you got new leadership. Can I have unlimited levels in the simulacrum, please? Please, can I spawn level cap? It would help with, you know, the point of the simulacrum, which was testing. Yeah, I know. Well, beggars can be choosy now. Oh, I forgot about companion buffs. My friends, you can use the Panzerful Profile for the Valor procs I already talked about, or you can use any Sentinel you want. Just make sure that on that Sentinel's weapon you have the Vigilante mods for the 20% chance to enhance critical hits from primary weapons. Even if the poor little Sentinel dies and never comes back to life, you will still retain that buff. Now, Empower for Mirage and her free ability Eclipse for a massive 840%. Keep in mind that 840% Eclipse means a whole lot more than 840% damage. That's simply how Eclipse works. And her ever so lovely clone. Beautifully, beautifully. Now, my friends, I'm gonna get my stacks on. A single shot into this guy. I didn't even get to see the procs. I mean, what slashes? Right now, I am killing the targets if I'm getting myself a headshot just with the raw damage alone. And that is thanks to Mirage Prime. If you want to see, wow, if you want to see the slashes and all whatnot, you're gonna need yourself higher level targets than I can spawn right now. Let's draw some conclusions regarding the Astilla Prime. I didn't like when it first came into the game simply because there were certain combinations that would make the normal version of the Astilla stronger than the Astilla Prime, and that simply felt wrong to me. That was because Riven disposition. New weapons coming into the game come with a Riven disposition of only 1 out of 5, which I understand the reasoning behind, but they can also cause issues like the case of the Astilla Prime. Now, Galvanized mods came into play, and Arcanes, and now the Riven disposition also climbed for the Astilla Prime, so that is no longer the case. I wholeheartedly recommend this absolutely beautiful, powerful, crowd-clearing weapon, 100%. As always, my name has been Leyzar. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, favorite, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. If you got any feedback for me, if you felt I missed something, by all means, I'm only human. Let me know in the comment section down below. You can also catch me on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, all the usual places. And if you love the content and you want to help me keep making it, consider supporting us via Patreon. There will be a link in the card, upper right portion of the screen right now. But until next time, my friends, bye-bye.